Hey, what's up, everybody? Listen, I want to share something with you that is actually a result of a conversation I had yesterday. And sometimes with my mind, when I have conversations, when those conversations are over, my brain continues to have that conversation with itself. And I hope that's not too strange for some of you to comprehend, but that's just how my mind works. And I came up today at the church doing some work and just had this prevailing thought, a warning more than anything, that I would really like to share with those of you, number one, that can handle it, those of you that will be able to hear it and understand it. And here's the premise of this. Be careful of those who have mastered the illusion of love. Let me say that again now. Be careful of those who have mastered the illusion of love. You say, Pastor Troy, what in the world are you talking about, sir? I'll tell you what I'm talking about. Love is a very powerful experience. Some would say love is a powerful emotion, but I have come to understand that love is so much more than just an emotion. Love is really an experience. If you've ever felt love, given love, or been in love, you know that I'm flat out 100% accurate when I say love is an experience. What many of us have not been trained to even be cognitively aware of is that in this world and throughout history, there have been some people who have mastered the illusion of love. Now, this particular subject and this particular truth affects minorities in a way that it does not affect non-minorities. You say, well, how is that possible, Pastor Troy? Love is love, and it all affects us the same. And I wish that were the truth, but it's really not the truth. We as minorities, especially specifically the African American blacks, if you will, we have a genetic deficit of love, which has literally been encoded in our DNA through our trials, our tribulations, the experience of our ancestors, and the ripple effect of all of the things that we've experienced based on the color of our skin in this country and in countries abroad. Now, people think, well, there's no way that that could really affect us from a genetic disposition, but research has proven that that's exactly what has happened. Now, it doesn't happen to all of us, but it does happen to far too many of us, and it happens to us unknowingly. But there are signs and symptoms where we can really evaluate those among us who have been affected, and should I even say infected, by this genetic deficit of love. Hey, I want to interject something here that I think will be just a little more proof that what I'm saying is not something I'm making up, that it's actually historically documented. And it goes back to the days of slavery here in America. One of the things that many of the slave masters discovered was the power of the illusion of love. It's documented that once they discovered the power of the illusion of love as it related to slaves, African Americans and blacks who had been stolen from their land, transported to a foreign land, and forced to labor laboriously for their masters while their families were destroyed and separated, while women were raped and even children were raped and even men were raped by other men of the slave master's family and even the slave master at times. They discovered the power of the illusion of love, so much so that once it was discovered and instituted and used and leveraged as a manipulative tool, it confused many slaves mentally and spiritually. It confused many slaves emotionally and even physically. You say, how so, Pastor Troy? Well, it's documented that at some point there were even some slaves who fell in love with their slave masters. The same slave masters that were beating them and mistreating them and using them for free labor, raping them and raping their children, and sometimes raping the men, and separating families and selling other family members off. Many of the slaves fell in love with their slave masters. You say, how in the world could that even be possible? Well, it's what I'm teaching you today. It's the power of the illusion of love. It's a very manipulative, powerful tool that many now today still exercise and leverage and use to those who are unknowing, unwise, or just not aware that it even exists. So much so that there were times, and it's been documented, that when slaves were freed legally, many slaves cried and refused to leave the plantation that many of them had grew up on. Many cried and refused to leave the plantation where their loved ones had been enslaved, where many of their family members had died, many of the people they knew had been raped. Many cried and refused to leave, and they cried because they were torn. They cried because they were confused and conflicted, because they are watching other family members and other brothers and sisters depart from this place that many had dreamed about and sung about and prayed about leaving. And instead of going with them, who accepted freedom, chose freedom, moved when they got the word that, hey, we are emancipated, they decided to stay, and they were emotionally torn. You've heard me say it before, and I'll say it again, that this is what trauma looks like. This is what a traumatic experience looks like. And this is what the deception and the illusion of love can do for you. Or should I say, do to you. It will confuse you and convolute your thinking and have you thinking that even though this person or these people, this plantation, this institution has mistreated me, has done me wrong, has been bad for me, has been evil, has sold my family members off, have chopped off the feet of people that I've known to try to run away and escape, have raped women, men, and children. The illusion of love makes you choose that which never loved you in the first place. But because your mind and your heart are tethered and attached to the illusion, you can't imagine a life without that love that you thought, that you believed, that you were convinced was actually real and true. And here's the danger of that kind of illusion of love. It causes the abused, the manipulated, the used, the slaved. It causes them to excuse the evil, the wickedness that's being perpetrated against them, all in the name of love. We see this with children who are abused in our modern day culture. We see this with women that are abused in our modern day culture. We see this in many, many places and spaces. And this is why I wanted to insert this particular part here to maybe even pull this truth that I'm sharing with you, pull it together a little tighter so that your eyes might be open and you might be able to see that all love is not real love, and that there are some who have mastered the illusion of love. Now I'll jump back into the other portion of this video. Hope it bless you. What I'm saying is that when we think we are being loved, or when we feel we are loved, we, those of us who have been affected negatively from the ripple effect of slavery and the ripple effect of racism and the ripple effect of feeling unwanted or not being wanted or being treated differently based on the hue of our skin, it is traumatizing. Whether or not we want to admit it, it is very traumatic. No matter how hard we try to smile and no matter how hard we try to hide it, at the core of our being, many of us still bear the repercussions and the consequences of centuries of denial, centuries of rejection, centuries of hate, centuries of being made to feel like there is something wrong with us simply because the Creator blessed us with this beautiful shade of brown and black and all the hues that fall in between. Here's how you know that you've been adversely affected, either psychologically, either traumatically, even through history, even through genetics. Here's how you know that you've been affected as an African American person and that you carry this thing in you that causes you to sell out or causes you to settle simply because you feel like those individuals or that individual that you are settling for or selling out to, you feel love. And listen, I guess at some level that would be okay to some people if the love was real. You say, well, how do you know it's not real? Well, that brings me to my second point, that there are individuals for generations, guys, who have decided to master the art and the illusion of love. And the reason why it's an illusion is because it's not love. How do you know it's not love? It feels like love. It sounds like love. It makes me feel like I'm loved. You know it's not love if you can ever take a few steps back and look at it in its totalitarian presentation. In other words, taking a few steps back and looking at it and noticing, okay, that this thing that is presented as illusion of love that makes me feel like I'm loved, it's really a device that's being used to allow me to accept being used. Okay, I don't know if you guys are going to catch this one, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and hope and believe that you're going to be able to get this one. It gives you the deceptive clearance to say to yourself, it's okay for me to be used because I'm being loved. And here's where it gets tricky. Oftentimes you don't even see that you're being used, and oftentimes you don't feel that you're being used until somebody on the outside who doesn't have that genetic deficiency to want to please people to such a degree that if they feel love, they make it okay to be used. Somebody like me, who I don't have that in my DNA. I don't have that in my genetics. I am not thirsty for the love of anyone, which really frees me from being the slave of anyone who makes me think I'm loved or who makes me feel like I'm loved when they themselves are simply using the power and the experience of love as a manipulative tool to make me okay with being used. And we see this in our current culture, but it's not new. It is something that has been pervasive throughout history. It is something that allows those of us who, until our eyes are open, we walk blindly like sheep. We assimilate and associate because somewhere in our mind, the assimilation and the association makes us feel like we have value and like we have worth. When if we really had value and we had worth, we would never have to assimilate and associate with individuals who really don't love us for who we are. They simply tolerate us for what we can do, what we bring to the table, for our amazing talents and our amazing gifts that no one else can do like we can do. Sometimes you've got to look around and you've got to open your eyes, even if it's painful, and recognize I'm being used. I'm being used because I'm gifted. I'm being used because I'm talented. I'm being used because no other can do it like I do it. No other can do it like we do it. And you've just got to be mindful enough to know that in this world, there are people, they exist, guys, who have mastered the art and the illusion of love. And they give you that feeling, because once you have that feeling, if you're at a deficit of self-worth and self-value, you will make it okay with yourself to be used. And you won't even see it as being used, because you feel like, hey, I'm just serving, I'm just giving, I'm just doing because I'm loved. I pray to God, though, that if you're in a situation where you think it's love and it's not, my prayer is that God will open the eyes of your spirit. That God will let you have one of those moments where he pulls back the veil and you really see what maybe you don't want to see. Because in many instances, to see behind the veil, to see behind the heart of man, to see behind the motives of man, to see behind the sweet words and the accolades, and to see behind all of the things that look and feel like love, you would find that it is an illusion. It is a mirage. It is a tool that one has mastered, and it's mastered it so that one can manipulate our people into following, supporting, obeying, serving, and sacrificing. And I just pray today that these words will resonate with many who may have never even considered the possibility that there are individuals, entities, organizations, and dare I even say ministries and churches that are masters at the illusion of love, and they have learned to leverage it to manipulate the hearts, the minds, the talents, the abilities of African Americans and minorities, especially those who unknowingly have this deficit, have this genetic, traumatic encoding that when they receive love, they are willing to settle, they're willing to sell out, they're willing to assimilate, and they're willing to associate because it makes them feel better about themselves, makes them feel important, makes them feel like there's somebody, and it really gives them a sense of worth and a sense of value. I want to say this because I know this to be true. Those things have to begin and resonate within before they are experienced without. Now, it's great to have that experience externally. It should be that way externally, but that's not where it should start. It becomes dangerous if that's the impetus. It becomes dangerous if that's where it starts. It becomes dangerous if that is the source, because then that is the source that has the power to control you, your choices, and your decisions. The question is, at what cost to you? Think about it. I hope you can understand it. I hope you can comprehend it. Just know that everything that's presented as love isn't really love. There is the illusion of love. And here's what I know about it. Time always tells the truth on real love and the illusion of love. I hope this blesses somebody today. God bless.